Welcome back. It's loaded and rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson, trucking expert here at FreightWaves. On the topic of today, the FMCSA Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. Now, many of you may not understand that it's not like Publishers Clearinghouse where you win, but you may lose if you show up on the clearinghouse. And we're going to be diving into the impacts, especially how it comes to fleets, how they're recruiting drivers, what it means. And joining us to talk about it's going to be Michael Precia, President and Chief Strategy Officer at Fleetworthy Solutions. Mike, pleasure to have you on the show. A lot of stuff to dive into, but for folks who are not familiar, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as you mentioned, I'm president of Fleetworthy Solutions. I've been here for 8 years, and we specialize partnering with carriers of all sizes to help them, make sure that they're running their authority in a compliant manner, both on the driver side and their assets.
And, looking at the compliance side, my wife works in compliance and I get to learn a little more behind the scenes. I usually did the operations side, the fun stuff, if you would call it fun, before you recruited the drivers. But the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse is coming up on 4 years. And it's something that time flies when you're having fun. But if you're a compliance person, the extra complexities. Talk a little bit about not only from your perspective on how it's impacted the industry, but second part, how's it impacting safety?
Yeah, so the intent of the program was to shine a light on what could be a black hole as you're trying to bring in new drivers to your organization. So the attempt of building a nationwide database that's accessible so that you can identify drivers who've had DUIs or things in the past with a past employer. So I think the intent was great. The goal was to make the roads safer. The problem is anytime you do something that large scale, sometimes the technology can't scale with the demand. So I think early on we saw things like the site crashing, and not being able to scale to the number of drivers that were putting their information into the clearinghouse. But I think since the beginning, that part of the problem has caught up. Now it's other things that are making it harder for carriers to get drivers in the cab.
Let's dive into some of these other things because it does seem like quite a monumental task having this nationwide database and all the reporting requirements. But when we're looking into that, what are some of these other things for top of mind for folks who are not as familiar?
Yeah, I think the big thing is remember that the first step in clearinghouse requires the driver to take action. The actual driver has to, register and get the information into clearinghouse, not the carrier. So you can imagine if, especially for owner operators, that's now a new step that they have to go through to be able to be qualified to, be hired as a driver. So there's some issues there. And then on the carrier side, now you have another thing that you have to be mindful of and remember to do on an annual basis. So it's, even though the intent is to make the road safer, it's added a lot of work for both the driver and then the carriers themselves.
And is this something where, let's say I've been a driver for 10 years for the same company, is every driver going to have to deal with this kind of reporting requirement? Either the company has to report on the driver status or I have to self-report?
Yeah, so all the drivers are self-reporting or getting registered, and then the carriers are responsible to do the queries on an annual basis. And you can imagine they have a lot of things that they have to keep their arms around from a compliance perspective. That's the reason a lot of carriers are partnering with companies like Fleetworthy, a third party that can, whether it's use their technology to help remind them to go do these queries or actually do the queries for the carrier so they can stay on top of this new step that they have to take as a carrier themselves.
That's kind of blowing my mind because I have to fill it out. So if I'm a driver and self-reporting it, does that mean that I have to self-report that I got a DUI? But then that also means once I self-report it, there's going to be a lot of problems. Is there a way that they find out otherwise, or is it still right now solely based on self-reporting within the
Yeah, it's reporting on the driver's side to register, and then it's the responsibility of the carrier to post when things are happening, when these incidents occur, right? They have to be on top of that and report that information as well. So the whole goal is to drive transparency so that we're making sure that the drivers that are in the cabs are safe drivers. But you can imagine as hire younger drivers, and as the driver community is kind of morphing, this is just a this is another thing a driver has to do. So the question is, does it deter drivers or individuals to become commercial truck drivers because of a mistake they made or in the past? So good intent, but it's making it harder for carriers to get drivers from an applicant status to in the cab, because there's additional steps they're going to have to take.
And looking at what happens, this will be a two-part, but let's look at the beginning part. If I'm an existing driver, I get a DUI, something happens, I'm on the clearinghouse, big no-no score, of course. What are the next steps? I'm assuming I want to try to remove this and get back to driving. What can drivers do once it shows up?
Yeah, so that's the thing. They're going to get put in a held status of that they have to get to a place where they're eligible to drive again. So again, this is another thing that can delay the speed of which a driver can get in the cab. And the carriers have to be responsible or cognizant of, if they have a driver that has an issue, they go from this ineligible status and have to go through all the steps to remove that incident, or do the things that from an education purpose to be eligible again to drive.
So you could mess up, say you're on home time for a weekend and you get a DUI or you get popped with a drug charge. You're not even in the cab, you're not even driving. But then when you decide to show back up to work on Monday, if it's reported, then you can't even drive until that gets resolved.
Yeah, they'll put you in a prohibited status, and you have to go through the process of getting that cleared. And then what adds to that problem is when you look at all the things that are happening, from marijuana being legal and things like that, it adds another level of complexity when it comes to, am I eligible to drive or not?
I want to dive into the drug scheduling part in a minute, but one of the things I'm kind of curious about is that Road Check Week had one of the things was DOT drug and alcohol, the clearinghouse checks as they were inspecting these vehicles. What happens if you get inspected and you're on the list and you're in that prohibited state? What are the consequences?
Yeah, the consequences are you can't drive until you get through that, get out of that prohibitive status. I think in 2023 there was like over 200,000 drivers that had that type of situation that had to be cleared. Uh, Half of which were for THC, which is being legalized. So it does cause a lot of complication when it comes to drivers with CDL licenses and all the morphing changes of what's legal and what's not. But what shows up as a positive, that's what makes this a complicated situation.
You're like a California carrier, Colorado, somewhere where the marijuana is legal, and then I'm curious about that as well. Does that mean that is there a two-tiered system to getting back active if I have that happen, or is that something where it's penalizing the drivers who do live in those domiciles and they may partake on the weekend, or something happens and they get caught? And is that a two-tier? What happens next? Because that is a whole new can of worms, I feel like.
Yeah, it's the process of a case by case process of getting these drivers cleared, and as they're in a prohibitive state, they can't drive. So it's another hurdle for a carrier, and understand that driver shortage and the ability to find drivers is always one of the top problems that a carrier has. So this is just adding another step of how do we discern between drivers that have a positive on something that is legal versus someone who in fact had a DUI. It's just it just adds to the complexity of running your authority.
Well, that's the fascinating part with alcohol, because I feel like it's grandfathered in. It theoretically would be a Schedule 1 in and of itself. I was talking about moving marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. There'd been some talk. If it moves to a different schedule, is that a situation where for trucking in the industry, would you still be safer to just treat it as if it was a Schedule One? Still, don't do drugs, the dare equivalent, or would this mean that changes would introduce more flexibility? But then you have the looming clearinghouse.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an opinion, right? If a carrier is focused on compliance and their goal is to be beyond compliant, which is what we try to get our customers to do, and they're really focused on wanting to get their drivers home safely. Sometimes just because something is legal doesn't necessarily mean it translates to a driver being safe in the cab. When they're in a large vehicle and driving alongside, people that are not driving for a career but just trying to get home. So it does create this question, right? Is it about safety, or is it about the legality or something being legal, but it still might deteriorate your ability to drive? So it's an interesting equation and problem for the industry.
And I'm kind of wondering as well, on the recruiting front, I'm assuming also certain medications. You hear about the meds saying don't operate motor vehicles, can't operate those. So I'm assuming as well, moving forward, marijuana is probably not one of those things you can operate with a motor vehicle. So we'll never see
Yeah.
a situation where, let's say you're in a California, you've got your card saying you need it for medical reasons, or a Georgia or something. It would still be treated almost even if you change the schedule, just like having certain pills, I'm assuming, even if the schedule changes.
Yeah, I agree. That would be my assumption as well. But again, it's that question of, if we're trying to make the road safe, how far do we reach in regards to the medications and the things that the drivers are using?
Yeah. And working with fleets, like, how's the rollout been? I know that, like, we're 4 years in, specializing in helping fleets with compliance. Is this something where do specific fleets struggle, smaller fleets, larger fleets, or is this just kind of a very tedious thing across the board in terms of trying to constantly update, in addition to things like driver insurance cards, DOT med certs, and all the other things?
So we feel like the clearinghouse is a good program and has made positive impact across the industry, but it's created issues both for the small guy who is an owner operator and not only has to manage the business, but is driving the truck themselves. This is just another thing that they have to do and remember to do while they're actually being responsible for driving and getting loads to where they belong. And so it's just another thing they have to do. So it's hard for a small owner operator to manage the business, be compliant when they have a small organization to do all these things. But then on the large side, the large carriers, this is for them, if I have thousands of drivers, this is another step that I have to take to prove that we're compliant and we're serious about safety. But again, now that for them it's just a lot of data, yet another thing that they have to be responsible for, and that's the reason a lot of people partner with companies like Fleetworthy, so that they can hand that burden over to us so that we can do the queries and make sure that they're compliant to the regs.
Well, let's dive into what Fleetworthy does, because you have a cool technology suite. You have a platform helping folks figure this out. Tell us a little bit about it. It's called CP Suite. How does the technology aspect, how does Fleetworthy get involved to make it easier? Because we've already outlined it's a big headache to deal with. How do we make that better?
Yeah, so we understood when we built CP Suite that carriers, were already having a hard time keeping track of all the data coming out of the cab. So we wanted to build a platform that was agnostic in nature and could take that data that's coming out of the cab and put it in one place. So you can connect the dots on how you're doing from a driver compliance perspective and your assets as well. So on the driver side, you take the traditional DQ files that are required to operate legally. We put it in an electronic platform, and we overlay dashboards and things so that carriers or people that are responsible for safety understand how they're doing from a compliance perspective, both on the driver side and then on the asset side. You can imagine if you have a large fleet and you're responsible to making sure that they're registered legally, have the right permits. Having a platform that can be that single pane of glass, showing you how your assets are doing from a regulatory perspective, how you're doing in regards to upcoming expirations and things that you need to do, like prerequisites. All of that's in our platform. and we're giving real time visibility into how a carrier is doing from a compliance perspective.
And the driver file, is that called a DQ file, like a disqualifying file? So things that can disqualify you.
Correct. Yeah. So there's 8 documents that the DOT requires you to have up to date in your DQ file. We have technology to house that electronically, and then we have a client services department that becomes an extension of our customers' safety departments to help them actually do the heavy lifting around making sure that your drivers are complying. For instance, making sure their driver's licenses are up to date, their med cards haven't expired, MVRs, all those things are housed in our platform, and we can alert both the safety department and the drivers of things that they need to take action on to maintain their compliance.
And that kind of ties into recruiting, because there's one thing I heard was that these DQ files, as well as asking about it, before you hire a driver, you also need to go through their DQ file before you can
Yep.
even send them an offer. Because if something falls through the cracks, then it's on you, right?
Exactly. So we support that too. As they're onboarding drivers, we help them by taking what historically might have been paper based and very inefficient, and replacing that with an electronic application, and all the different things that you need to do to get the driver legal to be driving for you. We create a much more efficient way by providing them an electronic platform to do those things.
And is it still very paper based? Because I know a lot of the freight technology is converting things, the images, converting the PDFs. Have we gotten to the point now where a lot of these DQ files can just be filled out electronically by using the platform? Or is another challenge the platform helps to achieve is that I've got to deal with all these hard copies and I need to digitize them into the platform?
Yeah, correct. So you hit it right on the head. So we've taken that that DOT, that application for your CDL driver that you're trying to hire. We've created an electronic way to grab that data, and then different authorizations and all those things that you need to do as a step of hiring your driver. We've created an electronic platform to make that more efficient. And then we connect that to the driver, giving them mobile apps and things so that they can take pictures of their driver's license, of their med cards, so that we can digitize those things that are, paper-based, digitize them, and then consume them in our platform and make them available to the safety department.
Is that something, because I'm curious about the mobile apps. Drivers have a lot of mobile apps. TMS systems provide ones, brokers provide one. But this could be a really useful one because I'm assuming if you have the app downloaded and notifications are enabled, you can ping the driver to upload their stuff, because that's one of the challenges I keep seeing is that it's one thing to have the platform and the end-to-end visibility, but you got to nudge them because they'll forget, and then they're out of service, and then they're mad because they can't drive, but they didn't do their job uploading their stuff because they forgot.
You're absolutely correct, and we've tried to make that very easy. So that we red thread that you hit it exactly accurately on how we manage that, right? So the platform that the carrier uses to visualize how they're doing from a compliance perspective is also connected to the mobile app, so that you can communicate to the driver. The platform will tell them when they need to take action on the things that they control, like a med card or their driver's license, to make it easy for them to get that to the system rather than having to fax it, or after you scan it and email it. It's all tied together in this ecosystem that is CP Suite.
Does that help as well with DOT randoms? That was one other thing I've noticed is such a pain in the neck, is that depending upon your fleet size, you have to do a certain amount of randoms, but each quarter you have they just send you a list and some people partner. Is that kind of the next frontier, or is it still just back of house administrative compliance and then you kind of deal with that stuff?
We are involved in, we do not do drug testing ourselves, but we certainly, because we are the database of record for their drivers. When they need to do random, we can support that by taking those drivers that are part of your random drug test, consume the drug test results in our platform, have it in one place, so that in the event of an audit, the auditor can go to one place and have all this information at their fingertips. And that typically means that the audits are much more efficient. The ability to go through your random drug testing is much more efficient because we have this single pane of glass with all the data in one place.
So you can have the driver, like, say I'm a driver, I got my DOT random, I get the call, I'm routed immediately in, and I get those forms. There's like two or three different forms. One of the forms says that like I actually showed up and did it. So they can upload it, or I can get it sent from the facility, and then I can just plug it into the database. That way, if anything happens, that's kind of the goal.
Exactly, and that's where our client services teams becomes an extension of our customer safety departments, because they help with the choreography of getting that data back into the platform so that it resides, in this one place, so that carriers can easily, illustrate how they're doing, in regards to compliance and following the regs.
Well, speaking of compliance, giving folks more, helping them manage it, you all recently was announced that you were acquired by Bestpass. Spoken with the folks at Bestpass, great people. Tell us a little bit about what does this mean for Fleetworthy as you all are moving forward.
Yeah, so we've been partners with BestPass for many years. So it was very logical and natural for the two companies to combine. What BestPass do. They're the leader of toll management, to help carriers reduce costs when it comes to tolls, toll violations, et cetera, which fits really nicely when you look at the things that we do at Fleetworthy. Now we have another data set that we can put into CP Suite to allow carriers to really have a 360-degree understanding of how the behavior of their driver is impacting them financially. Our goal is to help, our customers not only drive safely, but, with all the data that we are starting to compile, we can really help them not only take the most safe route or the safest route, but also, the most cost effective route, now that we are part of the leading toll provider in the industry. So we're excited about the value proposition that has increased when it comes to what we can do for our customers. And it just makes our data lake so much more valuable when now you can add transparency into tolls alongside with all the things that we're doing at Fleetworthy from a compliance perspective.
Well, that kind of opens up the door moving ahead. Is there any kind of technologies you're most excited about? You all are sitting on huge amounts of data, especially in the compliance space and the forms and the clearinghouse. Does that open the door, pave the way for using like algorithms, AIs, and other things to chew through that data moving forward and help fleets really make sense of it? We can theoretically predict the likelihood of issues with all this data.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential when you look at how AI is improving and advancing, and to your point, our robust data lake. So you'll see us start layering in AI and machine language things, or machine learning, excuse me, functionality in the product. We'll never get rid of the people. We think we have a three-legged stool that's really important. It's our technology, it's our people, and it's our understanding of the data. But anything we can do to make the product even more user friendly, we will do. So you stay tuned for some of the innovation that we will be layering into, what we think is already the leading platform in the industry.
I wanted to get the preview out there because it's exciting stuff. I look at all the data. It's like it's a gold mine. The biggest thing is capturing it, refining it, and making sense of it.
Absolutely.
Is the biggest challenge. So looking forward to seeing what y'all are doing with that. Got a little bit of time left for folks who are looking to get started. Small fleet owner op, doing it all by hand, losing their mind. What's the best first step that they can do when they want to try to just get a handle on this? Because I feel like my blood pressure would arise just trying to think about all the things I have to manage.
Yeah, exactly. We would recommend go out to our website, fleetworthy.com, click on the video that asks the question or answers the question, what does it mean to be fleetworthy? And understand, why we're on this mission to help carriers be part of making sure the roads are safe, and understand that we have technology and have people that you can partner with to help you push that big boulder that is compliance. So I think the first step is come visit us at our website and see why thousands of carriers are partnering with us every day.
And then you can find out about the CP suite as well from the website, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I've got about a minute left here. Looking ahead, drug and alcohol clearance house is not going away. Is there any one big stumbling block if we're thinking of any of this that fleets are getting tripped up on that they just need to stay top of mind if they're trying to digest this?
Yeah, I think our recommendation is finding a third party that you can partner with to scale will help you kind of navigate through Clearinghouse and all the things that are changing from a regulatory perspective. We understand that the carriers have to focus on getting their goods from point A to point B, and all the different regulatory changes are hard to keep up with. That's where a company like Fleetworthy comes in, where we can focus on that and make sure we bring all that information to our customers and help them feel like they're not trying to do all this alone.
Peace of mind with a partnership. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
That's going to be a wrap for this episode. If you're just joining us, it will be on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, wherever you may find your podcasts out in the wilderness. Every Tuesday, we have the show at 2 p.m. Eastern, but we have a newsletter as well. Check it out. It goes out on Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. If you like the content, check it out, FreightWaves.com/loaded and rolling. That's our wrap for today, but thank you all so much for joining us. Join us next week. We'll do it live.